Able to seal him. Here's the pass. Oh, what a catch! Leaping into the air and pulling it down is T. Higgins. Burrow facing pressure. Goes over the top. Wide open is Chase. And he splits the defenders for the touchdown. Cincinnati kid, Hubbard's got a convoy, chased by Andrews, at the
30, the 20, he will score! Hooday, Bengal fans. He is Mon. I am Jake. This is the Bengals Pulse, the heartbeat of our Cincinnati Bengals. Mon, we had to go live tonight to go over the recap of the last couple days since we were on the air. We got to tell everybody the story about how we go off the air, and 20 minutes later, it's like all Bengals Twitter hell breaks loose. We'll talk about that. But before we do, how's the rest of your week been, man? You been good?
Good. I'm fixing my light real quick. Good week. Very emotional week. A little upset about some of the guys that aren't Bengals anymore. It's hard, and we're going to talk about it. This is therapy for Mon today. All right, therapy.
Oh God, Mon, I don't know if we can spend that long on the air tonight to help you with the therapy that you need. But yes, really a crazy couple days in Bengaldom. It's been a lot of ups and downs, a lot of emotions, a lot of people really, again, like usual, going after each other for some reason on Twitter. We'll talk about all that crazy stuff. Hooday, everybody. Thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. We are very excited to be on the air and talking about all the crazy stuff that has happened these last couple of days. And hopefully tonight, there is some breaking news that we can bring you live here on the Bengals Pulse. We missed it by about 20 minutes, Mon. 20 minutes. We were on the air Monday night and really for an hour talking about really Geno Stone and a couple of the in-house guys that we signed, waiting for some news to break. We go off the air 20 minutes later. The Bengals sign Zach Moss, running back from the Indianapolis Colts, to a 2-year deal. And right after that, we hear about Joe Mixon getting cut. And then obviously the following morning, we find out that he has been traded. Let's talk about that first. Let's talk about that entire situation. The Bengals going a different direction at running back, which Jay Morrison, he told you, Mon, on our show last week, the Bengals were going in a different direction with Joe Mixon. But the Bengals going in a different direction, going with a little bit different type of a running back in Zach Moss. And then obviously the trade to the Texans. And not only the trade to the Texans, but then Joe Mixon gets extended and gets a nice payday in Houston, Mon. Let's talk about that situation first. What are your feelings on that entire situation? The Bengals going out, getting Zach Moss, again, a guy who has had a great year this year, filling in for the Indianapolis Colts. He ran all over the Baltimore Ravens. He's a very explosive runner, a guy that is one of those, he touches the ball anytime he could take it to the house, as opposed to Joe Mixon, a guy that's been consistent his time in Cincinnati, a guy that we both love. Mon, tell me a little bit about your feelings on the entire running back situation right now in Cincinnati.
Jake, everybody that watches this show, you know that I'm Team Joe Mixon. I've always wanted Joe Mixon to remain a Bengal. I'm a big fan of his. He's one of my favorite Bengals. I do respect the people that wanted to change. They brought up really valid points. The thing that irritated me the most is how they rewrote the narrative, how they made him an average to below average running back. They literally crapped on him. Okay. There's prominent podcasters that said he's just a guy. They even insinuated, hey, if he gets cut, he probably won't even get picked up by another team. You have others saying all this. He's just now all of a sudden he gets traded. He signs a new contract extension and they're doing the backstroke. Okay. Oh, well, of course he's a great fit for the Texans. Well, they never said that beforehand. Of course, they didn't know he was getting traded to the Texans, but they never said, hey, he'd be a great fit for another team. He was basically washed. He wasn't, the Joe Mixon of the past. We can have our disagreements, but we don't have to smear players. We don't have to do that stuff. Joe Mixon was a class act here. The controversies, the issues he had during the draft process, what did he do in Cincinnati? He's been a model citizen. Yes, he had some issues last year, offseason. I get that, but he's been a good guy. I mean, you see him at the football games. He's throwing the ball with the kids. He's a good dude. He was a good teammate. He brought electricity to that locker room, and he's not an average guy. He's not just a guy. That's silly, ridiculous talk, and that's what upset me. All right, but I wish him the best, but I'll tell you this, Zach Moss, I love Zach Moss. I hope he's the rushing champ of the NFL this year. I don't think that's going to happen, but I'm rooting for him, and I want him to succeed because I'm a Cincinnati Bengal fan. And you know what? I'm glad Joe Mixon landed on his feet. He's got a new contract. Good for him. Good for his family. I wish him the best.
Yeah, that press conference was a little hard to watch, wasn't it? I mean, Joe, again, class act to the end. Nothing but positivity about the city of Cincinnati and all of us Bengal fans. I mean, the guy really is a class act, and he's so hard not to root for, right? I mean, I think we all were a little nervous about the Joe Mixon situation. Bengal fans have kind of been split down the middle. Some wanted this, some didn't want this. You've always said, Mon, we know what we're going to get with Joe Mixon. We know the type of back he is. We know he's consistent, right? He's very consistent. He doesn't fumble the ball. He catches the ball well out of the backfield. He's not a guy that's going to get you a bunch of 20-yard runs, but he is consistent. And he was a great teammate, and he was a great leader. So yes, it's hard, right? It's hard when you lose a guy like that. But Mon, we've talked about this on the show for 2 years now. When you have a roster like the Bengals have, there's going to be change. And I'll say this. I will say this about everybody on Twitter. We as Bengal fans, we have asked this organization to not be as loyal as they have been, right? We want them to get into the time, so to speak, and make moves and do all these things and get younger and do all. Well, when you want that, guys, this is the kind of stuff that happens. A guy like Joe Mixon gets cut and, in this case, gets traded. But let's talk a little bit about, because again, we'll talk about the T situation here in a little while, but the Bengals obviously have a lot of money that has to be distributed to Jamar Chase, hopefully to T. Higgins this year already for sure, with the over $21 million hit on the Bengals salary cap. But the Joe Mixon situation, the money situation in itself probably had a lot to do with this. And then the other part is, again, we talk about the Bengals wanting to be more explosive in the run game. And Zach Moss, he brings that. And I think the one thing that Zach Moss has too is doesn't have a lot of tread on the tires, right? He is a guy that has been in the league now for a couple of years, but doesn't really have a lot of tread on the tires, Mon. And last year, I'll give you a couple of his bigger games. Against Tennessee last year, 23 carries, 165 yards, 2 touchdowns, 7.2 yards a carry. He had a run of 56 yards. Again, something that we have not seen in Cincinnati. Against Baltimore, against the vaunted Baltimore Ravens defense, He ran all over him. Mon, 30 carries, 122 yards. Houston, 18 carries, 88 yards. The Rams, 18 carries, 70 yards. This guy, he's a dude. I don't want that to get underplayed in the whole Joe Mixon situation, because the Bengals got a guy in Zach Moss, and you saw Eric put it up, 2 years, $8 million, $3 million guaranteed. A guy, Mon, that is going to be able to tote the rock and be a good matchup with Chase Brown. Thoughts on Zach Moss now?
I listen. I hope that continues here in Cincinnati. But Jake, I want him to succeed. I'm Cincinnati Bengals one and only. I don't want any player on the Bengals to struggle. But we're comparing apples and oranges here. Zach Moss has to play behind the Bengal offensive line now. He doesn't have Quentin Nelson. He doesn't have Ryan Kelly. He doesn't have Braden Smith. He doesn't have Raymond. They're a top 7 offensive line. It's a big difference. We'll see. I would love to see Joe Mixon run with the Colts offensive line. It's a huge difference. We'll see. He's a different back. He is quicker. He has a lot of definitely. His stats, explosive play wise. You just mentioned him compared to Joe. You're right. But he's playing behind a markedly better offensive line, and I think that's a big difference. Now, we'll see what happens this year. Maybe the Bengals are changing things up with their run game coordinator. We got a draft to reinforce our trenches. We'll see how it shakes out. But I think there's a big difference in offensive line talent. And let's see how Zach Moss does as a Cincinnati Bengal behind that offensive line.
Okay. And I think that's a fair point. I don't know if it's a big difference, but there's definitely a difference between the two offensive lines.
There's a huge difference. Jake, the Colts offensive line is 10 times better than the Bengal. It's not even close. Pro Football Focus had them 26 out of 32.
Talk about us.
Yes, the Bengals.
Talk about us.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we'll see.
And the Colts, where were they at?
Well, they have Quentin Nelson. We know him. Their center's ranked 8th out of 36. Their one tackle's ranked 6 out of whatever, the 6th highest rated tackle. The other tackle's 16th. All right, and Quentin Nelson, we all know about him. They're highly ranked. So I know the one tackle got eaten up by Trey Hendrickson, who doesn't when we played them. But, they have a formidable offensive line, and I hope Zach Moss can recreate that with the Cincinnati Bengals. And I'm rooting for him, man. I really am.
That's a fair point. I'm not sitting here trying to argue with you about the Colts offensive line. I'm just playing devil's advocate. I want to know if there's a glaring difference between the two offensive lines. But I will say this: the Colts were the only team higher than the Bengals running out of the gun. So again, Zach Moss used to running the football. I call it sidecar, but out of the gun. And those zone type of schemes. So we'll see. We'll see how Zach Moss, if he can bring that to Cincinnati or not, the explosiveness out of the run game. And again, that's not a knock. I'm not knocking Joe Mixon. I'm a Joe Mixon guy. I love Joe Mixon. I just want to make sure that
I understand. I know you are. I know you love Joe Mixon. Trust me. I know you do. I'm a little, still irritated by it. There's so many people that didn't want Joe Mixon on the team. I respect that. They have every right to do that. But then they start flipping. They're data freaks. Oh, this, broken tackle that. They bring in Zach Moss, who I want to succeed. But it's a whole different ballgame. The talent level on the Colts offensive line compared to the Bengals is night and day. So we'll see. It's just amazing how Mixon signs this big contract, and you see so many people doing the backstroke and trying to rewrite their takes. It is what it is. When we have good players, I want to keep our good players. I want to keep them. I want to keep Jesse Bates. I want to keep, T. Higgins. I want to keep these guys. I want to keep DJ Reader. I'm a little frustrated, and I get it. There's a business side, and we can't keep our stars. I totally get it, but I want the Bengals to win a Super Bowl. I'm sick and tired of watching NFL Network and seeing the replay of this Rams game. I want to get back to the Super Bowl. I want to be a champion. And I don't know. Let's continue. I'm just frustrated.
All right. I understand. I understand. And again, I'm not saying I wanted Joe Mixon to leave. I'm just saying, as the dust settles, because it's done. It's a done deal. Mixon's not coming back. As the dust settles, our focus and attention now needs to go on Zach Moss and the shoes that Zach Moss has got to fill. And I'm just saying, watching tape on Zach Moss, he is an explosive runner that if we do fix this run game on, you have two guys now in the backfield that every time they touch the ball, it can go to the house. That's exciting. But you're right.
I'm all for it. I'm all for it.
We have to fix the run game, right? I mean,
right.
The run game is something that you and I have talked about now on this show for I don't even know how long. The struggles and the scheme and, how the Bengals just line up out of the gun and try to run this zone scheme, and they struggle with it. So I want to see what Zach Moss looks like behind this Bengals offensive line. And again, if he can bring that explosiveness, hey, then the Bengals look like geniuses. However, at this point, everybody is still salty about Joe Mixon that was on the Joe Mixon bandwagon, like you and I. I mean, again, I'm not saying I'm still not upset about it. You could tell Joe Mixon was upset about it in his presser. He even said in his presser, like, I'm still very emotional about leaving Cincinnati. This is a guy that wanted to be here. And that sucks as a Bengal fan watching that. But, and C. Griff, I agree with you. You have a solid run game, and it fixes a lot of the other offensive situations. So let's see if the Bengals can do that. Let's move on, Mon, now to the other situation that Bengals Army. What's going on, guys? Houday, thanks for joining us. Let's talk about the other situation right now that's got a lot of people salty, and that is DJ Reader, a guy, Mon, who you and I both love. Again, I've said on this show many a times, he is a dude. He is serious. He's the best nose tackle in football. The Bengals offered. We don't know what they offered him. Obviously, it was lower than what the Lions came in at. The Lions came in at almost $30 million for 2 years, which that's a jump up in price when you're talking about a guy. Again, I'm saying this. I'm just stating facts because I'm playing devil's advocate. But you have a guy that has had a lot of issues, lower body with injuries. His second quad injury, a serious quad injury that we lost him for the season. He goes to the Lions. Mon, let's talk a little bit about this DJ Reader situation, and then we'll talk about how the Bengals are going to fix it. Your thoughts on DJ Reader signing with the Detroit Lions?
I agree with you. I understand the Bengals wanting some due diligence. Wanted to make sure that injury is okay because he did tear the other one a few years ago. Still, the Detroit Lions giving him a nice contract. He must have cleared their medicals. Teams aren't going to throw $25 million to somebody if he's not healthy. DJ Reader, Joe Mixon, Jesse Bates, Von Bell. Von Bell is back, by the way. All these guys were so big to the culture. Mike Hilton, 2021 Bengals, 2022 Bengals. These leaders are gone, and I have an affinity for all those guys, and that's why I'm a little fired up about it. I salute him. I wish him the best. I'm going to root for Detroit. I'm going to root for him. I wish he was on the team. There is a big hole on that defensive line because he's gone. We did sign Rankins. We're going to talk about him in a few minutes. There's a Tier Tart still in Cincinnati, I believe. They're not DJ Reader. They're not big like him. They're not that type of defensive tackle. So our run defense really struggled last year, Jake. We've talked about that so much. I don't know how it's gotten any better. Teams ran for 160-plus yards a game against us. It mostly happened when the backups came in to give the starters a breather, and we just had really bad depth issues, and it's not going to get any better without a DJ Reader. But That's the cards that have been dealt, and we have to deal with it. And you make fun of my age a lot, and we've had DJ Reader situations, we've had T. Higgins, we've had Jesse Bates situations, all the way back to the '70s. I can name 3, 4, 5 people each decade. The same things happen that's happening now. And the players that have come in to replace our original starters, a majority of the time, they don't meet that. They don't play at that level. That's never progress. That's sort of stagnation. The Bengals have changed so much in the indoor practice facility, all this stuff. It's wonderful. But when it comes to hardcore, these tough negotiations, they haven't. They haven't. And that's what frustrates me also.
Well, I think with the DJ Reader situation again, I'm just playing devil's advocate. I want to make sure I'm very clear about the way I feel about DJ Reader and how much. I mean, without DJ Reader, we're not talking about the Bengals playing in 2 straight AFC championships. And although he was hurt for one of those runs, still what he brought to the locker room and everything else that he brings to the table, all that stuff that you don't see as well. DJ Reader is one of the best human beings that plays in the NFL. However, again, devil's advocate here, Mon, a guy who the Bengals they loved, they obviously wanted him back, but there had to be some situation going on with this quad injury that kept the Bengals maybe from going with more guaranteed money than the Detroit Lions. Again, we don't know what was offered to DJ Reader, but I want to know your thoughts on this. This injury situation with DJ Reader. Do you think that had something to do with maybe him being a Detroit Lion and not a Cincinnati Bengal?
Maybe, probably, absolutely. Yeah, I assume it did. I know in the past the Bengals have put like injury waivers. If a player gets injured, some of the guarantees aren't there. I don't know if they did that. They could have. Again, he obviously passed his physical with the Lions. They gave him a nice contract. Trust me, teams aren't going to throw that type of money to a player that they don't think can play. So Rankins pretty much got the contract that DJ Reader was going to get. And it wasn't that much of a difference, Jake, if I'm not mistaken, maybe $1 million, $1.5 million. So maybe the Bengals just didn't feel comfortable doing that. Hey, Rankins is a good player. He's not a bad guy at all. I'm glad we got him. He's just a different type of defensive tackle than DJ Reader. I wish we could have had both of them because,
of course,
because Rankins is Larry Ogunjobi basically.
Yeah,
and we were at the Super Bowl. Larry O didn't get to play, unfortunately, but that defensive line was pretty good with Hill. Hill's a better player when he gets some rest.
Yeah.
When he plays too much, he wears down. So he's going to make BJ Hill a better player. That's Rankins is.
I agree. And Rankins kind of, again, the one thing, Mon, that you and I have been standing on the podium about, yelling to the rooftops that the Bengals have got to fix this interior pass rush. And they do. They go out and they get Sheldon Rankins, a guy who, again, had 3 sacks against Joe Burrow in like 9 pressures. I mean, he completely disrupted that football game for the Cincinnati Bengals. So that they know firsthand what Sheldon Rankins is capable of. And we do too. You and I have watched him for a long time now. He's a guy that's kind of been on our radar that we would like in Cincinnati. And the Bengals go out and they get him. And I think, again, this is one of those situations where DJ Reader leaves. I don't want that to cloud the fact that the Bengals got a very good player in Sheldon Rankins that is going to make a huge impact on that defensive line and the defensive pass rush, which is something that we have not had from that interior since Larry Ogunjobi and that group of 3 of Larry and DJ and BJ Hill. And now, again, I feel like if they're able to finish the Tart deal, and we have Tier Tart and we have BJ Hill and we have Sheldon Rankings, now maybe we're looking at a very similar situation. And again, going into the draft now, it's not a dire need. Although I do think the Bengals will still go defensive tackle in one of those first 4 picks in the first 2 days of the draft, Mom.
I agree with you on the draft there. Yeah, Rankings they've known for a while. He played in Kentucky, played at Louisville. They tried to sign him in the offseason a couple times, and he ended up signing with the Jets and bouncing around. They finally get him. Good player. He dominated that game against us last year. You remember that was a shootout, but there was like 4 or 5 drives in a row. Our defense had to punt, and it was because of Rankins. He was just a game changer. Our offense really struggled. Alex Kappa really struggled against him. Jake, in 2022, Pro Football Focus had him rated the 22nd best defensive tackle in football out of 127. So this guy has a lot of ability. We're going to get a lot of pressures from him. I don't know if we'll get a lot of sacks. He did get 3 of his 6 against us last year, but he's going to be a disruptor. He's going to cause that quarterback to get a little nervous, maybe throw a couple of errant passes. He's going to be a big upgrade to what we had. I'm glad he's on the team. That's a good signing. He makes our defensive line. It helps out. I don't want to say it's better because we lost Reader, but it's a good thing. It's a good addition. Let's hope we can finish it off with Teair Tart.
Well, we know that Teair Tart and Mekhi Becton were both in Cincinnati yesterday. Teair Tart again was there, still in Cincinnati today. Mekhi Becton, obviously the right tackle that I think the Bengals are targeting. Joe Burrow took them both out to dinner at Jeff Ruby's Steakhouse in the precinct last night, trying to close the deal, so to speak. So we will see what happens there. Eric just let us know that Tyrone Smith signs with the New York Jets. So that is another offensive tackle off the board, Mon. Jonah Williams goes to the Arizona Cardinals. Bye-bye, Jonah. I'm perfectly okay with that, Mon, as I know you are as well. But let's talk about this right tackle position now that is open. Mekhi Becton maybe being the target for Cincinnati. You and I have talked about maybe Trent Brown from the New England Patriots being another target. What do you think the Bengals need to do here? Do they need to go out and get a guy like Becton and then maybe draft an offensive tackle in one of those first 4 picks in the first 2 days? What are your thoughts on the right tackle position, Mon?
First off, Jonah Williams, wish you the best in Arizona. Right tackle, if they sign Becton, even if they sign Trent Brown, I think it's pretty much a done deal. I think they're going to sign a right tackle or draft a right tackle in the draft. I don't see how they can't, because Becton is a lottery ticket. He is young. He's athletic. A lot of upside when they drafted him. I think he's out of Louisville also, if I'm not mistaken. His coach was Frank Pollock. If he could piece it together, it would be a steal. And Jake, you know this, Reggie Nelson, Cedric Benson. There's a long list of players that were going to get cut or were cut by other teams that the Bengals swooped in and picked up, and they turned out to be really good players. BJ Hill was going to get cut by the Giants. What do? We trade Billy Price. That's a great steal. I mean, that was a hell of a trade. That was an unbelievable trade. So
same with the Reggie Nelson, right? With the Reggie Nelson trade. I mean, that was a steal.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're right. Said Benson bounced around. He wound up in Cincinnati. There's a long list of guys that have come in and played well. Could Becton be one of those guys if he signs? So I expect them, to get a stopgap tackle of one sort. They're going to draft one early. They really are. They have to. As we all know, this is it's one of the best drafts for tackle prospects. If you're going to get one, you better get one this year.
Well, and I think that is why it is so incredibly important that they get a guy like Tart, right? Because then now it kind of opens up the draft a little bit more, and the Bengals aren't forced to take one of those nose tackles and maybe reach on one of those guys where you don't really want to reach on one of those guys. because, there are only a good handful of run stopping defensive tackles in this draft. A lot of them are pass rush guys. So I do think it's very important that they go out and get a guy like Becton, they go out and get a guy like Tart, and then they're kind of able to draft at that position and maybe develop those guys. Gives them a little bit of time to develop them. And like you said, Becton has a history with Frank Pollock, so a guy obviously that Frank Pollock knows, and the Bengals are very interested in. Going to be very interesting to see if the Bengals get the deal done. Really haven't heard anything else about Becton. I read maybe that he left Cincinnati. I know Tart was still there. He might have left. That doesn't mean that they're not going to get a deal done, but we will see. I think the Bengals, though, they understand what they had to fix, right? I mean, they knew that they had to fix the interior pass rush. They go out and get Sheldon Rankins, and that brings me to my next point. And I think the absolute best part of this free agent period is what the Bengals have done at safety, because that really was the Achilles heel of this football team. The defensive line struggled. That's, I know I'm using that term very loosely. They struggled tremendously, but the back end of this defense was, I don't even know how to say it, but piss poor. I mean, it was bad. And what do the Bengals do? They go out, they steal the Ravens starting safety, a guy that had 7 interceptions. They get Geno Stone, 2-year deal, $14 million, $6 million guaranteed. A younger guy that's hungry, that knows this division, again, that helped carry that Baltimore Ravens defense all year. And then they go out and they get our guy, the guy that you and I, and again, not just us. I don't want to make it sound just like it was just us, but Von Bell. I think when you heard the coaches talk last year about the struggles, it wasn't Jesse Bates' name being thrown out there. It was Von Bell's name being thrown out there, because Von Bell was such an impactful player on this defense, helping with all the communication that goes on the back end. And you saw the struggle that Dax Hill and Jordan Battle, I mean, 2 young guys, a 2-year guy, a 1-year, a rookie, those guys are going to struggle communicating in the back end. The Bengals not only get Von Bell, first of all, they get a compensatory pick for him, right? This year, they get him for a 1-year, $7 million deal. $6 million of that's being paid by the Carolina Panthers. And they go out and get, you talked about them losing 2 captains in DJ Reader and Joe Mixon, but they go out and they get an ex-captain that is going to come back right into this organization and right back into this locker room and take control not only of the back end of the defense, but help lead this team. Hude, Iron Man, good to see you. What do you think about what the Bengals have done at the safety position? Because now, instead of Dax Hill and Jordan Battle, again, Jordan Battle, I love him. He's my favorite pick of the draft last year. But now he gets to play behind Von Bell and learn from Von Bell. It's only going to make Jordan Battle better. But what do you think about Von Bell and Geno Stone, the 2 new safeties on the back end of this Bengals defense?
Yeah, we all knew last year there was going to be a drop-off. When you lose Bates and Bell, they were arguably top 3 tandem in the NFL. We knew that there was going to be a drop-off, and that is what it is, but we didn't expect it to be what it was. It was literally, it was a cliff. It was a big cliff. Dax Hill had his moments. Jordan Battle came in and played really well towards the end of the season. He didn't get to play much at the beginning. 6 of our 10 defensive backs were first or second year players. They were missing that veteran presence, like you just said very well. Von Bell, Geno Stone, they're going to be the glue that reconnects that secondary. Jake, you're at my house. How many times did we see those explosive plays? I think the Bengals gave up over 120 explosive plays last year. In the Texans game, they gave up 17 in one game. Explosive plays, 20 yards or more. I guarantee you, if Von Bell was there, that number wouldn't be what it was. It would be a lot less. Could we have won one or two more games? I think we could have. I really do, simply with a Von Bell back there. But it is what it is. He's back now, and that makes our team a lot better. It really does. He's going to come in. I still expect Jordan Battle to play a lot. He deserves it. This guy's an up and comer. He really is. He's going to be a stud. Just remember, it's still his second year. He's still learning and figuring things out. It's good to have Von Bell there. And Geno Stone is a young guy, but he's played 4 years, played on a good defense, 7 interceptions last year. Good pickups by the Bengals.
And again, we kind of talked about this off air. I'm honestly, I'm shocked that the Bengals went out and took care of this safety situation. I mean, you heard Coach Lou talk about it. So you knew that they knew that there was an issue, but man, oh man, to go out and first of all, you could tell Geno Stone is so happy to be in Cincinnati. He's probably like, good Lord, thank God now I finally have a quarterback that knows how to win in the playoffs. I mean, Geno Stone has got to be on top of the world right now to not have to play on the same team as that I don't know if you call him a choke artist or a fraud, but that running back that's playing quarterback in Baltimore. And you see, again, you talk about a team in our division. We'll talk about this later, but the Ravens lost a lot of players in this free agency period. A lot of guys bailing, knowing that we have no chance to ever see a Super Bowl with Lamar Jackson playing quarterback. But Geno knows that he is now part of something great. And he talked about that in the presser. And I think Geno and Von Bell now, that pair is going to really solidify the back end of that defense. And a couple of our listeners even talked about how well Vaughn plays in the box too, to help against that run, Mon, where we struggled so much last year against that run. And Von Bell comes in almost like a linebacker and can play in the box and, again, blitz off the edge. I mean, he can do a lot of things. He's one of those weapons that Lou likes to do different things with and scheme in different ways. So for me, I am through the moon with Von Bell. And again, I would love to have Joe and DJ and Vaughn back and all that, but it's just not the way the world works, Mon. It's just not. And to have Vaughn back, I think helps. It helps with that situation of losing some of those captains, right?
Oh, absolutely, he does. That was his strength. And we talked about the 2021, 2022 Bengals. I think what people don't realize, it wasn't just talent. It wasn't just Joe. It wasn't just the skill players. It was the intangibles, that locker room. And it was just so strong. The leadership, and Von Bell was a big, big part of that. I'm just glad he's back. I don't want to harp on the negatives. Dax Hill, that one game against the Steelers, where he misses the tackle and takes out DJ Turner. The next thing you know, Pickens runs 80 yards for a touchdown. If Von Bell was back there, Von Bell would have tackled him, would have been a 9-yard completion. Those are little hidden yards, little things that, that we missed last year, for example. And I'm glad he's back, and it stabilizes that back end, and that's what we needed.
Oh, tremendously. I mean, it stabilizes it tremendously. And I think, again, having his leadership back too is just, it's going to be huge for this Bengals team. So now we shift over to another position of need that the Bengals go in and attack in free agency, signing Mike Gesicki, tight end from the New England Patriots, a guy who has moved around a little bit these last couple years, but really hasn't found a niche. And I think this could be the niche. I mean, Joe Burrow is well known for getting tight ends paid. So Gesicki signs with the Bengals 1 year, $2.5 million, a really good contract, a 1 year prove it deal. And he comes onto a team again, playing with the best quarterback in football. You got to be excited about this one, Mon. Gesicki talked about in his presser, as soon as free agency started, his number one team was the Cincinnati Bengals. What are your thoughts on Mike Gesicki, and not just Mike Gesicki, Mon, but the Bengals also re-signed Drew Sample, and today Tanner Hudson is now a Bengal for another year. This Bengals tight end room, Mon, really shaping up in a very positive way. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, we went from no tight ends under contract to having three. Sample, I'm glad he's there. We know what he is, a blocker, can give us a few catches here and there. Gasecki is 6'6", 245. He's really a large slot receiver. He's not going to give you a lot of blocking. Him and Hudson are similar players. He's had a lot of success in the league. He really has. I was looking at his stat line. His interview with Dan Horde was something else. I didn't realize how productive he was with the Dolphins and where he's played. Yeah, he is. And the Bengals haven't had a tight end like that in a while. He's a mismatch at 6'6", at 240. I mean, like I said, he's going to be our Tyler Boyd, basically. He's going to play. He's going to be our slot wide receivers. So it's going to be interesting. Hopefully he has a good chemistry with Joe Burrow. I'm looking forward to him playing and potentially signing another contract with the Bengals after this year.
Yeah, and only 28 years old. I mean, he really has a lot more tread on his tires, so to speak, right? And a guy that we really haven't had like this since Tyler Eifert, right? Was the last time the Bengals had a downfield threat at the tight end position. And I still think this opens up the draft for a tight end. I think, again, we talk about defensive tackle, we talk about right tackle, and the Bengals attacking those in the draft. I still think the fourth tight end is somebody that will be drafted here at the end of April. And I know you don't want to hear this, Mon, but going to be very interesting to see if Brock Bowers is there at 18, what the Bengals do. I know you will. I know you will not be happy about it. But man, oh man, again, giving the best quarterback in the NFL a bunch of weapons is not a bad thing as well. And one of those weapons signs again today. Trent Irwin re-signs with the Bengals. One of my favorite Bengals. I'm very excited about this. A 1-year, $2 million deal, or $2.5 million deal, I think, for Trent Irwin. A guy that has done a great job these last couple years after some injuries. He has stepped in and played the role fairly well. I mean, again, he's not a number one, but he is a guy that can help this Bengals team. He's a guy that Joe Burrow has a lot of faith in. So the Bengals add Trent Irwin and Tanner Hudson, both with 1-year deals. Nice to have both of those guys back, right?
Absolutely. Irwin is a practice squatter that has earned his way onto the roster. He's given us some moments. If Brock Bowers is there at 18, absolutely the Bengals are going to consider it. He's a top 10 pick in some mock drafts. Yeah, I mean, I'm on the record. I just, it's a luxury. We don't need that. I mean, has Joe Burrow ever been void of weapons? No, he's had weapons his whole career. And could it make the Bengals better? Absolutely. But Jake, we have glaring holes on the trenches, just huge holes.
I don't disagree.
And I just don't know how that's going to shake out. But you know the Bengals, buddy. They love their toys. They really do.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And again, why would you not? Why would you not with a quarterback that really is able to open things up? And has got a lot of these tight ends paid, right? I mean, the last couple years, CJ Uzama, Hayden Hurst, these guys have played 1 year with Joe Burrow and ended up signing big deals with other teams. And hopefully Gesicki ends up having one of those years as well. Mon, I want to talk about real quick before we talk about targets and who the Bengals need to look at right now, who's left in free agency. Let's talk about the departures real quick. Cheeto Awuzie signs with Tennessee. Again, goes and joins Coach Callahan. Good for Cheeto. Happy for him. Joe Mixon, we talked about, gets traded to Houston. One of the best things that has happened all of free agency is the Kansas City Chiefs signing Irv Smith. Absolutely love that for the Chiefs. Good luck with that one. Jonah Williams goes to the Arizona Cardinals. Sadly, Nick Scott, as most of us knew, was cut. Good luck to Nick Scott. He's a great dude. Just didn't happen here in Cincinnati. DJ Reader, we talked about leaving for Detroit, and a special team staple for the Bengals, Stanley Morgan Jr., signs with the New Orleans Saints. Mom, I just want to know real quick, because there is a couple big name guys. What's the toughest out of that list? What is the toughest one for you to handle right now?
I none of them are real surprises, but I will say this: Cheeto was coming off the ACL last year, uneven, struggled, did make some plays, but before that injury, he was, to me, a top 5 cornerback in football. He was that good. He was grossly underpaid. He was the biggest bargain because he was playing so well. The Bengals need another vet corner. They really, really do. I know they have Von Bell, but they're going to have to add another corner. It's just you can never have enough of them, ever. Cheeto got a hell of a payday with the Titans. He really did. And, Coach Callahan knows him well. He knows how good he is. That's one guy I wish we could have kept. I really wish we could have kept him. But,
Wow.
It's money is money. I get it. It is a business. It's not play money. We're not doing a simulator on Madden here. But Cheeto would have been a nice get.
Yeah, I agree. I think for me, it's DJ Reader. Again, I know I was playing devil's advocate earlier, but losing DJ Reader to me that's a tough one. That's a real tough one, and it's not so much for any reason. I mean, I love Joe Mixon too, but I think position wise and where the Bengals are right now, DJ Reader, if healthy. And again, I say that, Mom, because I don't want to be that. Well, he was injured all the time. I don't want to be that guy. But a healthy DJ Reader is probably still on the Cincinnati Bengals right now. I believe that. I do believe that.
I had already spoke about Reader and Mixon. That's why I just picked somebody else. But you're right. The Reader thing, the injury, I get. But Jake, I think the Bengals were pretty aggressive with him, and they gave him their final best offer. It was pretty close to Detroit's. So I think the Bengals probably felt pretty comfortable because the Bengals don't want to waste money. They don't do that. Yeah. But money talks. Maybe there's a little bit more guarantee in Detroit. He's not a Bengal anymore. I'm going to root for him. I mean, this guy, he made Bengal football fun these last few years. He really did. Yes, you can look at his stat line. He's not a 10-sack guy, but what he did to make the other players around him better. I mean, Logan and Pratt should write him a check because those guys made some money off of him.
No doubt. I agreed 100%. Again, but I want to say this, and I want to real quick before we get out of here too. I want to talk about who you think the Bengals should target with what's left with free agency. But let's talk about our division real quick and what has happened with our division. It's really been a class.
You're licking your chops. You're licking your chops on this one. You're licking your chops.
I have been waiting for this one because it has been a clown show. I mean, the other 3 teams in our division have no idea how to run their organization. It has been an absolute joke. The Baltimore Ravens, we'll start with them. Again, a mass exodus of players leaving. They know they're not going to win with Lamar. What do the Ravens do? They go out, they give a 30-year-old running back a bunch of money that was good 4 years ago. And now their world is saved because they signed a big-name player. Again, this Ravens team is going to be lucky to win 9 or 10 games next year. The Pittsburgh Steelers go out. They just trade their best quarterback on their roster in Kenny
He's such
Pickett.
a
And that says,
crapster.
listen, that says a lot about their roster, Mon. When Kenny Pickett is the best quarterback on your roster, they trade him. Then they go out and they trade Deontay Johnson, their best receiver, Mon. Their most consistent. Let me say that. Their most consistent receiver in Deontay Johnson. And again, the Steelers absolutely making a mockery of free agency. And then we got our Cleveland Browns, right? The Cleveland Browns go out and sign Jameis Winston, who sadly, Mon, is now the best quarterback on that roster. It's just, Mon, I'm absolutely loving watching the other three teams in our division completely mismanage their off seasons as the Bengals get healthy and climb back to the top of the division. It's fantastic. It's almost as good as us having a great offseason as watching the clown show in Baltimore, Cleveland, and Pittsburgh. It's been great. It's just been great.
Yeah, I was waiting for this segment. I was like, just take over. I mean, literally. I mean, you're glowing. You're absolutely glowing.
I
I'm
am
just
glowing. It's hysterical, Mon. It's just great to watch.
I'll tell you this about the Ravens. The Ravens lost a lot of players. You're absolutely right, but the big one is they lost some big coaches. Their defensive coordinator's gone, and he made a big difference to that team. They took it to another level. Jake, they have a lot of good players left. They really do. They got some difference makers there. I respect them, even though I want them to lose every game. The Browns still have a really good defense. I think the Browns are just going to try to basically, control the clock and just win with that defense. Their defense is formidable. Pittsburgh, you can say what you want about them. That daggone coach doesn't lose. They just don't lose. And Russell Wilson is better than Pickett. It is a bad look. I mean, they drafted him. How many takes did you see on Twitter? Pickett is the next Burrow. I think he's better than Burrow. Who was that? LaShawn McCoy said that he's going to be a Joe Burrow. And everybody's pulling up those receipts. It is what it is. Let's just get our Bengals to continue to improve and beat those guys.
Listen, the one thing I'll say this to our buddy Aaron. The one thing you can hang your hat on is Lamar Jackson is still the best running back on your roster. So congratulations. Lamar is still the best running back on your roster. Okay, let's talk about and by the way, isn't it very odd how similar Lamar Jackson and Andy Dalton's career is going? It's very odd, right? Has a great regular season, can't win in the show. It's very odd. Anyways, I don't want to get on that. But let's talk about, Mon, who should we target going forward? We have a couple minutes left, Mon. Give me a couple names the Bengals should target moving forward in free agency.
Well, I think we mentioned the big ones there. We mentioned them. Teair Tart is probably the best of the defensive tackles remaining, even though he's not a true nose tackle. Becton, Brown. We need to find a right tackle that has some starting experience that could come in and help us out. If not, we're going to have to find a plug and play guy. And in the draft, another corner would be nice. I could see the Bengals signing at least 3 more players. Wouldn't be surprised if they sign. No, they will sign another punter. They really will. They want competition with Brad Robbins. So look for a cornerback, another defensive lineman, and a right tackle to come in. There's some good players out there. Obviously, free agency is going to start to wind down a little bit. This is a very active first week. I mean, it's sort of like, I know you don't watch the NBA a lot, but it reminded me of the NBA and their free agency. It's just all kinds of, every day there's crazy stuff happening. Yeah. And somebody did mention this on Twitter, and Paul Dehner mentioned it the other day in his podcast too. They're going to explore trades. They will explore trades. We have 10 draft picks, Jake. 10. Don't be surprised if the Bengals maybe send a 5 or a 6 to pick up a defensive lineman that might get cut on another team, another B.J. Hill situation. So there's a lot of options out there.
And again, by the way, while we've been on the air, no Bengal news, but Jimmy G, now a Los Angeles Ram, Mon. Jimmy Garoppolo, now a Los Angeles Ram. Crazy times we are living in. Crazy times. All right, and again, Mana, I'm with you. I'm with you there. The last thing I'm going to say before we get off air is T. Higgins. There's been stuff going on tonight where something about T. Higgins is in prison in Cincinnati and all this other stuff. I don't know what's really going on, what the story is, but tell me real quick in just a minute or two, your thoughts on the T. Higgins situation. Is this something that the Bengals need to move on with? Do they need to look to trade him? Or is this a situation that's gotten volatile? Or are we still good with T being a Bengal? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's going to get ugly personally. I don't know anything about the story that you're talking about. I have no idea what's going on there. I just think his agent is going to force a trade. T doesn't want to play on $21 million contract. If he, tears an Achilles, ACL, that's going to cost him another 30, 40 million in guaranteed money. He's going to hold out. I think it's going to be a distraction. I think it's going to turn into a trade. My heart wants him to stay. I think he's such a good player. Jake, last year, he wasn't the same T because he was on that 1-year deal. And he was playing, a $2 million contract. These guys, their hamstring flares up a little bit. Trust me, they're going to take it easy because they don't want to risk anything. If T. Higgins had a 4-year contract and he has the same, hamstring issue, he's going to play the next week. But when there's a big unknown with his contract, I think he's going to just, cautious, so be cautious with it. And I don't blame him. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. I want him to be a Bengal, but I think it's going to turn into a trade. I really do. I expect that to happen.
It's very interesting now, right? Because there's so many things that go into this T. Higgins thing, and you don't want to see it becoming volatile. But I want him so badly to be a Bengal. I do not want to lose T. Higgins. That to me would be a tough one. And again, I know Bengal fans right now are split on this, and now with this whole thing that's happened tonight, there's a lot of people out there, Bengal fans, that are pissed off. And I really don't know exactly what's going on either. We've been here, but hopefully that situation works out and we'll be able to talk about it early next week. Hopefully we'll be able to talk about a couple more signings. Hopefully there's some clarity with the T. Higgins situation. Again, we want to thank, we had almost 1,000 people in the chat tonight. That is incredible. Thank you guys so much for all the love and all the support. We love you guys. We appreciate you guys so much. Mon and I would not be here without you. So thank you. Keep tuning in every week to the Bengals Pulse as we get closer and closer now to the NFL draft. We will hit you back with a new mock draft coming up here very soon. Mon, we're going to get out of here. Any last words you want to say?
No, great show, guys. Sorry, emotional week. I'm still trying to process this. I need some therapy. I'm joking. I'm just, I'm sad. I'm sad these guys are gone. I really am, but it's part of it. I get it. Thank you guys so much for supporting us. We appreciate it. Thank you, Ace and Zim, for letting us get on the Cincinnati network. We appreciate you guys.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, guys, that is another edition of the Bengals Pulse. As always, if you like this podcast, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to this podcast. Make sure you check us out on all the awesome podcast platforms, Apple, Stitcher, Spotify. As always, make sure you follow Mon on Twitter at @TheFireMon. Follow me on Twitter at Coach Jake Owens 9. Follow Eric on Twitter at eFlash with 2 H's 88. The Cincinnati Podcast Network at Cincinnati Pod. And as always, follow the Bengals Pulse on Twitter at Bengals_Pulse9. On Instagram, the same without the @Bengals_Pulse9. And as always, if you like this podcast, make sure you give Mon and I that 5-star review. We very much appreciate that. All right, Mon, another great show. I look forward to early next week, hopefully talking about a couple more signings with Tier Tart, maybe Mekhi Becton. Who knows? We will see. Hopefully some clarity on this T. Higgins thing. He is Mon. I am Jake.
Thank you, Eric.
This is the Bengals Pulse. Thank you, Eric. We love you. Hoo-day, Bengal fans. We will talk to you next week.
Balloons. Where are they? Balloons.
No balloons for you.